The door opened, and Chinedu stepped out. He looked different. Not just in appearance, though his clothes were finer, his wrist gleamed with a watch Nkiru had never seen before, but in posture. He carried himself like a man who no longer needed permission. The village erupted in praise. Chinedu, our son. City has favored you. He smiled broadly, shaking hands, accepting admiration with ease. Nkiru stood at the edge of the crowd, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure others could hear it. She waited for him to look for her. He did not. Instead, he spoke to elders, laughed with men, waved at women. He was generous with smiles, careful with attention. Finally, as the crowd thinned, Nkiru stepped forward. Chinedu, she said softly. He turned. For a moment, something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps, or irritation. Then it disappeared. Nkiru, he said flatly. That single word struck her harder than silence ever had. You are back, she said, forcing a smile. You didn't tell me. I came suddenly, he replied. They stood there, strangers wearing familiar names. Later that evening, he sent a message through a boy. Meet me behind the old palm grove. Nkiru went. Her heart raced with hope and fear twisted together. He was already there, leaning against the car, arms crossed. You have done well, she said, unable to hide the pride in her voice. People respect you. Yes, he replied. I have worked hard. She waited for him to say more. He did not. Finally, she spoke. Why didn't you call? Why didn't you tell me you were coming? He exhaled slowly, as if preparing for a difficult conversation. Nkiru, he said, things have changed. Her heart stopped. I have grown, he continued. I have seen the world. I cannot be tied down by village expectations. What does that mean? She whispered. He looked away. I am married. The words fell like stones. Married. The word tilted. Sounds blurred. For a moment, Nkiru thought she might fall. To who? She asked, though her voice barely came out. To Adiz, he replied. Her family is influential. She understands my life. Nkiru stared at him, her mouth open but empty of words. You promised me, she finally said. I promised what I thought was possible at the time, he replied coolly. But life does not wait. Tears filled her eyes. What about everything I gave you? She asked. What about my mother's suffering? What about us? He sighed impatiently. You should be grateful, he said. I helped you see beyond this village. Her heart broke completely. Grateful. That night, Nkiru walked home in silence. Mama Ezin knew before she spoke. The sound of your footsteps is different, her mother said. Nkiru collapsed at her feet and cried like a child, her body shaking with sobs that had been waiting for months. Mama Ezin held her, tears streaming down her own face. Some men, she whispered, use women as bridges, only to cross over. The village reacted swiftly. Whispers turned to open talk. So she thought she would marry him. She should have known her place. City men don't come back for village girls. Shame settled over Nkiru like a heavy cloth. Days later, Chinedu came to the house. Mama Ezin stood tall despite her weakness. My daughter gave you everything, she said. What do you give her in return? Chinedu avoided her eyes. I cannot change my decision, he said. But I will help when I can. Help. Like pity thrown to a beggar. After he left, Mama Ezin collapsed onto the mat, coughing violently. Nkiru watched her mother struggle for breath and felt something inside her tear apart. That night, she did not sleep. She sat outside, staring at the moon, replaying every promise, every smile, every word. Betrayal had finally spoken. And it had spoken loudly. She placed her hand on her stomach, not knowing yet that life was already growing inside her. The cruelest betrayals always leave something behind. Pain did not leave Nkiru after Chinedu's confession. It stayed. It settled into her bones and learned her breathing. For days after his visit, she moved like a shadow through Umuaka. She cooked without tasting food. She fetched water without feeling its weight. People greeted her, but their voices sounded distant, as though coming from another world. Mama Ezin grew weaker. The betrayal had struck her harder than sickness ever could. At night, her cough tore through the small house, deep and frightening, like something trying to escape her chest. Nkiru sat beside her, rubbing her back, whispering prayers she barely believed in anymore. One morning, as Nkiru bent to tie her wrapper, dizziness washed over her. The ground seemed to sway. She held the wall until the feeling passed. It happened again the next day. And again. Her body was changing, quietly, deliberately. When her monthly bleeding did not come, fear gripped her heart. She tried to dismiss it, but the truth refused to stay hidden. Her breast ached. Nausea visited her every morning. Her body knew before her mind could accept it. She was pregnant. The realization stole the air from her lungs. She sat on the mat for a long time, staring at nothing. Her hands trembled as she pressed them against her stomach. The life growing inside her felt both like a curse and a miracle. Mama Ezin noticed her silence. "What troubles you now?" her mother asked weakly. Nkiru knelt before her and wept. When she finally spoke, the words came out broken. "I am with child." Mama Ezin closed her eyes. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then a single tear slid down her face. "Does he know?" she asked. "Not yet." "You must tell him," Mama Ezin said quietly. Not for him, but for the truth. Finding Chinedu was easy now. He moved openly through the village, confident in his new status. His car stood like a symbol of distance between him and everyone else. Nkiru approached him one afternoon as he spoke with men near the square. "Chinedu," she said. He frowned slightly but followed her aside. "What is it?" he asked, irritation already in his tone. She took a deep breath. "I am pregnant." For a moment, he stared at her as if she had spoken another language. Then his face hardened. "That is not possible," he said. "It is," she replied softly. "You know it is." He laughed, sharp and bitter. "Do not bring this problem to me," he snapped. "I am a married man." "This child is yours," she insisted, tears streaming down her face. "I am not lying." He stepped back, as though her words might stain him. "Do not destroy my life," he said coldly. "Whatever you are carrying is your responsibility." The words cut deeper than any insult. "So all those nights, all those promises," she whispered, "they meant nothing." He turned away. "Do not look for me again," he said. "I have moved on." Nkiru stood there long after he left, the sound of his footsteps echoing like a final judgment. The village reacted with cruelty. Pregnancy without a husband was a crime in Umuaka, especially for a woman who had loved too openly. Women whispered openly now. Men shook their heads in false pity. Shameless girl. She trapped herself. Her mother did not train her well. Mama Ezin heard the whispers. They crushed what little strength she had left. One night, rain poured heavily, flooding the compound. Mama Ezin's breathing became labored, each breath a struggle. "Nkiru," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Come closer." Nkiru held her mother's hand tightly. "Do not let this world harden you," Mama Ezin said. "What happened to you is not your fault." Tears fell freely now. "If I do not live to see this child," her mother continued, "love him enough for the both of us." "No, Mama," Nkiru cried. "You will live." Mama Ezin smiled weakly. "Mothers know," she said. Before dawn, her breathing slowed, then stopped. The house fell silent. Nkiru screamed. Her cry tore through the rain and into the morning, raw and unending. Neighbors came running, but nothing could be done. Mama Ezin was gone. The burial was quiet. Poverty does not afford loud funerals. As the earth covered her mother's body, Nkiru felt something inside her collapse completely. She was alone. Pregnant. Unwanted. Unprotected. That night, she lay on the mat, one hand on her stomach, the other clutching the space where her mother should have been. The child inside her moved faintly. For the first time since betrayal entered her life, Nkiru whispered through her tears, "I will not abandon you." Outside, Umueka slept peacefully. Inside that small house, a woman learned the true weight of survival. The night Nkiru went into labor, Umueka slept. No drums announced new life. No women gathered with warm water and encouraging songs. No elder stood by to bless the child. Only pain came. It began as a dull ache in her lower back while she was returning from the stream. At first, she ignored it. Pain had become a familiar companion, one she had learned to walk beside without complaint. But as darkness fell, the ache sharpened, rising and falling like angry waves. By midnight, she could no longer stand. She lay on the thin mat in the empty house, sweat soaking her wrapper, teeth clenched to keep from screaming. Each contraction tore through her body like fire. She reached instinctively for her mother, then remembered. There was no one. She crawled to the doorway, hoping someone might hear her cries, but the village was quiet. Even the dogs were silent, as if the world had agreed to look away. "NNEM," she whispered into the darkness. "Mama, help me." No answer came. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. Time lost meaning. Her body shook violently as another contraction hit, stronger than the last. She cried out, the sound breaking free despite her effort to contain it. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with sweat and dust. She thought of Chinedu. Not with love anymore, but with disbelief. How a man could walk away from a woman in this kind of pain. How promises could disappear so completely. At dawn, as the first weak light crept into the room, the pain reached its peak. With a final, shuddering cry, the child came. A thin, desperate cry filled the room, small, but alive. Nkiru collapsed back onto the mat, her whole body trembling. For a moment, she lay still, unsure if she was alive herself. Then she heard the cry again. She pushed herself up painfully and gathered the child into her arms. He was small, his skin wrinkled, his cry weak but determined. Her tears fell onto his face as she held him close. "You came," she whispered. "You came to me." There was no joy the way stories described it. No laughter. No singing. Only relief mixed with exhaustion and fear. Later that morning, an old woman from a nearby compound noticed the blood-stained wrapper drying on the line and understood. She came quietly, without questions or judgment, and helped Nkiru clean herself and the child. "That child fought to live," the woman said. "He is strong." When she left, the house returned to silence. Nkiru named the boy Chukudi, God exists. She chose the name not because she felt God's presence, but because she needed to believe he had not completely abandoned her. Days passed slowly. Hunger returned quickly. Milk was scarce. Nkiru's body was weak, her wounds still fresh. She wrapped Chukudi tightly against her chest and went back to work as soon as she could stand. People watched her with new eyes now. Some pitied her. Others judged her openly. Children whispered behind her back. Women shook their heads when she passed. That is the girl Chinedu ruined. She gave herself too cheaply. Her child has no father. Each word cut, but she said nothing. At night, she rocked Chukudi to sleep, humming songs her mother used to sing. Her voice was thin, but steady. Sometimes she spoke to him in whispers. You are not a mistake, she told him. Do you hear me? You are not. When Chukudi was barely 2 months old, Nkiru swallowed her pride and went to Chinedu's house. The compound was large, clean, secure. She stood at the gate for a long time, holding her son, rehearsing words in her head that dissolved each time fear rose. When Chinedu finally came out, his face hardened. What do you want? He asked. She held the child up slightly. Look at him, she said quietly. He is your son. Chinedu glanced at the child briefly, then looked away. I told you not to come here, he said. This is not my concern. Even dogs protect their young, she said, her voice breaking. Is this how little I mean to you? He reached into his pocket, pulled out some money, and pressed it into her hand. Take this, he said. And do not come back. The money burned in her palm. She dropped it on the ground. I did not come to beg, she said, tears streaming down her face. I came for truth. He turned his back on her and walked away. That was the day something inside Nkiru finally died. She stopped hoping. Life became routine suffering. She worked. She fed her child. She endured. Chukudi grew, quiet, observant, unusually serious for a child. He clung to his mother, sensing the world's hostility even before he could understand it. One evening, as Nkiru watched him sleep, she realized something with startling clarity. She had survived betrayal. She had survived childbirth alone. She had survived her mother's death. She would survive this too. But survival, she knew now, was not the same as living. And somewhere deep inside her chest, a slow, invisible fire continued to burn, waiting for the day when truth would no longer be silent. The years that took everything. Years did not pass gently over Nkiru. They passed like hands that took and never returned. Chukudi grew quickly, not in size at first, but in understanding. By the time he was 5, he knew hunger by name. He knew which days his mother would come home with food and which days she would smile and say she had already eaten. Nkiru walked wherever she could. On some days she washed clothes until her fingers cracked and bled. On others, she worked on farms under the burning sun, her back bent, her wrapper soaked with sweat. At night, exhaustion pressed her into sleep before her thoughts could return. But her body remembered everything. The childbirth had never fully healed her. The years of malnutrition, grief, and endless labor wore her down slowly. She began to cough the way her mother once had, a deep, hollow cough that came at night and refused to leave. When Chukudi noticed, fear crept into his young eyes. Are you sick, Mama? He asked one evening as she struggled to sit up. I am only tired, she replied, brushing his hair with weak fingers. It was a lie told out of love. As Chukudi grew older, he began to see the world's cruelty more clearly. Children mocked him openly. Where is your father? They asked. Does your father know you exist? Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they fought him. Each time he came home bruised or silent, Nkiru's heart cracked a little more. One night, as rain drummed on the roof, Chukwudi asked the question she had been dreading. "Mama," he said, his voice small, "why don't I have a father like the others?" The room felt suddenly too small. Nkiru sat quietly for a long time, her chest tight, her eyes burning. "Your father," she began, then stopped. She had promised herself she would never poison her child's heart with bitterness. But silence was becoming its own kind of poison. "He made choices," she said carefully. "Choices that had nothing to do with you." Chukwudi looked at her, confused. "Did he not want me?" Her breath caught. "He did not know how to love properly," she said softly. "But you are loved." Chukwudi nodded, though his eyes were not convinced. From that day, he became quieter, more withdrawn. He watched men closely, studying their actions, measuring himself against them. Nkiru saw it and felt helpless. Her health worsened. Some mornings, she could barely stand. Her cough deepened. Her chest burned as though something heavy lived inside it. She hid her weakness from Chukwudi, forcing herself to walk through pain, refusing to collapse in front of him. One afternoon, while returning from the farm, her legs gave way. She fell by the roadside, her vision blurring. People gathered around her. "She is overworked. She has suffered too much. Who will help her?" No one answered. Chinedu heard of her condition. He did nothing. Years had softened his memory of her. Or perhaps he had buried it completely. He lived comfortably now, respected, shielded by wealth and status. Adiz had given him children, sons who carried his name openly. Nkiru watched them from a distance sometimes, her heart aching in ways she could not describe. Chukwudi saw them too. One day, as they passed Chinedu's compound, he stopped. "That man looks like me," he said quietly. Nkiru froze. "Why do you say that?" "Our faces," he replied. "They look alike." She said nothing. That night, her cough returned with violence. Blood stained her cloth. She knew then. Her body was giving up. She began to prepare quietly. She taught Chukwudi how to cook simple meals. She showed him where to fetch water, how to avoid trouble, how to greet elders respectfully. One evening, she held his hands and said, "If I am not here one day, remember who you are." Chukwudi frowned. "You will always be here." She smiled sadly. In her dreams, Mama Ezin appeared often now, standing at a distance, calling softly. Nkiru woke each time with tears on her face. The years had taken her youth. They had taken her strength. They were now coming for her life. Yet still, she endured. Because she had one purpose left, to see her son stand on his feet. And somewhere beyond Umuaka, fate was already turning its slow, patient wheel. Life has a way of waiting. It waits until pride is fully grown. Until arrogance is comfortable. Until a man believes himself untouchable. Then it strikes. For years, Chinedu Okafor walked with confidence that bordered on arrogance. Wealth wrapped itself around him like armor. In the city, his name opened doors. In Umuaka, his return visits were greeted with praise and envy. But fortune, like loyalty, is not permanent. The first crack appeared quietly. A business deal collapsed without warning. Partners who once laughed with him stopped answering calls. Money he expected did not come. Bills arrived faster than payments. At first, Chinedu dismissed it. Setbacks happen, he told himself. But setbacks multiplied. A loan went unpaid. Another business failed. Then another. Adiz, his wife, watched him with growing coldness. She had married success, not struggle. Arguments filled their once quiet house. "This is not what I signed up for," she told him one night. "You promised stability." Chinedu snapped back, pride still burning. "You think I planned this?" But as weeks passed, frustration hardened into blame. Adi's family withdrew their support. Friends avoided him. Invitations stopped coming. When money left, respect followed. One morning, Chinedu sat alone in his large house, staring at walls that suddenly felt too wide. His phone lay silent beside him. For the first time in years, a memory surfaced uninvited. Nkiru. He pushed it away. But life was not finished with him yet. The final blow came when Adis left. She packed quietly, efficiently, without tears. "I need peace," she said. "And you no longer have it." She took the children. She did not look back. Chinedu's world collapsed in a matter of months. Illness followed stress. His body weakened. The confidence that once defined him evaporated, replaced by fear and regret that arrived late and stayed long. In his sickness, his mind wandered to the past, to promises made lightly, to a woman he had used as a stepping stone. He asked about her. "She is still in Umuoka," someone told him. "She is not well." The word stirred something painful in his chest. When he finally returned to Umuoka, there was no celebration. No crowd. No praise. Only silence. He walked the familiar path slowly, leaning on a stick, his once proud shoulders slumped. People stared but said nothing. He stopped before a small, tired-looking house. Nkiru's house. He hesitated. Inside, Nkiru lay on a mat, her breathing shallow. Chukwudi sat beside her, fanning her gently. When Chinedu entered, the air changed. Nkiru opened her eyes and saw him. Their eyes met. Years of pain passed between them in that moment. He stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Nkiru." She stared at him calmly, without anger, without warmth. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I was wrong." Silence answered him. "I have lost everything," he continued, desperation rising. "Please, forgive me." Nkiru turned her face toward the wall. That simple act broke him more than words ever could. Chukwudi watched silently, his jaw tight, his eyes dark with understanding far beyond his years. Chinedu knelt, tears streaming down his face. "Say something," he begged. Nkiru did not. Some apologies arrived too late. When Chinedu left the house, the sun was setting. He walked away smaller than when he came. Inside, Nkiru closed her eyes. Her strength was nearly gone. But her silence had spoken everything. Death did not come suddenly for Nkiru. It came the way her life had been taken, slowly, quietly, without ceremony. The morning after Chinedu's visit, the sun rose pale over Umuoka. Its light crept gently into the small house, touching the cracked walls, the worn mat, the thin body of a woman who had carried too much pain for one lifetime. Nkiru woke with difficulty. Her breath was shallow, each inhale a struggle, as though her chest no longer wished to obey her. Chukwudi sat beside her, as he had for weeks now, alert to every sound she made, every movement of her fingers. "Mama," he said softly, "should I fetch water?" She nodded faintly. When he returned, she asked him to sit closer. "Chukwudi," she whispered, her voice barely more than air, "listen to me." Fear rose immediately in his eyes. "You will not go anywhere," he said quickly. "I will take care of you." She smiled, weak, but full of love. "You have always taken care of me," she said. "Even when you were too young to know it." She reached for his hand, her fingers cold. "I may not see the man you become," she continued, "but I know who you are." Tears spilled freely down his face. "You are kind," she said. "Do not let this world turn you cruel. You are strong, but do not let strength become pride." She paused, gathering breath. And never feel ashamed of your beginning, she added. You were born in truth, even if truth was denied. Chukwudi nodded, unable to speak. She squeezed his hand weakly. My son. I am tired. The words terrified him. No, Mama, he whispered. Please. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them one last time. I love you, she said. As the sun climbed higher, her breathing slowed, then stopped. Chukwudi screamed. The sound tore through the compound, raw and broken. Neighbors rushed in, but it was already done. Nkiru was gone. The village mourned, loudly this time. Women wailed. Men shook their heads in regret. People who had judged her now praised her endurance, her strength, her sacrifice. She suffered too much. She was a good woman. We failed her. But their words arrived late. Chinedu heard the news that same day. He did not come. Some silences cannot be undone. Nkiru was buried beside her mother, under the shade of a young tree. The earth closed over her quietly, as though respecting the way she had lived. Chukwudi stood by the grave long after everyone else had left. I will not forget you, he said softly. Years passed. The boy became a man. Chukwudi left Umuoka, not out of bitterness, but purpose. He worked hard. He studied. He refused shortcuts that smelled of betrayal. When people asked about his father, he answered calmly. My mother raised me. That was enough. One evening, long after Nkiru's grave had settled into the earth, Chukwudi returned to Umuoka. He stood beneath the Udola tree where his mother's destiny had changed and whispered. I survived. The wind moved gently through the leaves, as though answering him. Final moral. Betrayal does not end with the betrayer. It lives in the lives it breaks. But even in broken ground, truth can still grow. Thank you for watching and supporting this channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Hit the bell button for more videos.